All right, welcome to the GRadulting Workshop Series. I know that it is a busy time as we near the end of the semester, so thank you for making the time to join us today. My name is Debbie McCutsky, and I am the Coordinator of Services and Programs for Graduate Student Legal Aid. And today we will answer the question, how do I avoid scams and identity theft? This important workshop is co-sponsored by Graduate Student Legal Aid and Undergraduate Student Legal Aid. So before we address that question, I have a few announcements. Today's workshop is the final workshop of the semester, but workshops will resume in February with 10 new topics on things like how to buy your first home, investing on a tight budget, and help with doing your taxes. So we are working very hard to make it a great semester of workshops. And if you missed any of our past workshops, you'll find links to the recordings, the presentations, and other resources on our website. So just look in the chat for the link to that. And you'll find resources there on things like how to buy a car, avoiding accidental plagiarism, and how to manage student loan debt. So lots of good information there. So in addition to these workshops, the legal aid offices provide free legal services to UMD students. We have staff attorneys with us today, Zach Mundy and Cindy Schilling. Say hi. Their job is to serve students, so please take advantage of them, and they are very familiar with all kinds of student issues like tenant-landlord problems and traffic tickets and all sorts of things. We also have an immigration attorney that meets with students once a month. The last consultation date of this semester is Wednesday, December 9th. So if you are an international student or you have some immigration-related issues, please visit our websites for information about how to schedule a consultation. Next, we have advocates on our staff who help students who are charged with a violation of the university's code of conduct or the code of academic integrity. We're here again to support students who find themselves in this unfortunate situation. So visit our websites to learn about everything that we do and how to schedule virtual appointments. The link to that will be posted in the chat. So here's the groundwork for our workshop today. We will share the PowerPoint presentation and the recording after the workshop. Feel free to post your questions in the chat. And near the end of the workshop, we will post a link to our 6-second survey. And I mean it, 6 seconds. So please make the time to give us feedback. We want to make sure we're doing a good job for you. So let's get started with today's workshop on the topic of scams and identity theft. We have 2 speakers with us who have a great deal of experience in helping students who have been victims of scams and identity theft. First, I want to welcome Detective Daniel Moser from the University of Maryland Police Department. And second, we'll hear from our very own Zach Mundy, who is Grad Legal Aid's director and attorney. Detective Moser, thanks so much for joining us today. Please tell us, what do we need to know about scams? What's going on at the university? Okay, it looks like your mic, like you're muted there. All right, Detective Moser, are you with us? We are unable to hear you. Okay. It looks like if the last three numbers are 249, you are muted. I just.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
There you are. Hi, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Sorry about that.
Absolutely. We are so happy to have you with us, and we appreciate you making the time
Not
to
a
talk
problem
about
at all.
scams, because I know it's a big issue at the university.
Yes, it definitely is. I would actually like to see if I am able to share my screen here so I can share a PowerPoint.
That'd be great.
Let's see. It says the host has disabled it. I'm not sure. Is that something that can be changed?
Yep, we're working on that right now.
No problem. In the meantime, yes, there's a number of scams. They're very, very, very common. Unfortunately, there's been numerous students here that have been victims of that. I know people in my personal life have been victims of it. Just random strangers that I've come across. Unfortunately, it's kind of the flavor of the month if you want to put it that way. There are many, many common scams, and most of them are pretty synonymous with the imposter scam, which usually involves somebody calling you and taking a chance at, asking if you own a certain type of car, or saying that you owe money to the IRS, or if there's anything immigration related. Most of the time these people call and it just ends up being kind of like a catch-all. They just call and they hope that if they're doing this to multiple people, somebody that they're going to call in these call rooms that they're in are just going to respond to them saying, oh, I own this kind of car, or, well, yes, I am not an American citizen, or I am here on a visa, or something of that nature. So unfortunately, a lot of these just end up being, they're taking their chance and they end up getting lucky with some people. So,
right. So
let me see.
I just want to let you know, Detective Moser, that you are now co-host. So try sharing your screen again, please.
I see. Okay. Let me see here. All right. Can you guys see that?
We can. Terrific. Thanks.
No problem. I'll jump through the PowerPoint here and set it up that way. So obviously, yes, I'm Detective Moser. I'm with our Criminal Investigations Unit. I'm also assigned part-time to the United States Secret Service Electronic Crimes Task Force, which actually recently became the Cyber Crimes Task Force. So that's something that we go to quarterly, and we involve and we talk to a lot of federal agencies, and we're partnered with a lot of people. So end up learning a lot about identity theft and scams. So obviously, I will try to be as clear as I can be with this. So as you can see, there's a lot of common scams, as I was saying. They're known as imposter scams. Usually it involves people calling with urgency, saying you have to pay a lot of money, or you have to pay a small amount of money, and then if you pay that money, then they'll ask for more money. Unfortunately, they seem to victimize a lot of people here at the university. Now, not all of them are successful. We get a handful of people that report them to us, but I'm sure there's actually a fair amount of people who are victims of these and actually don't come forward for a variety of reasons, which can be understandable. But they can occur through text message, email, social media, phone calls. Something very common that you can see is obviously you'll get a phone call. Somebody will be on the other end. It'll be an automated message, or it might actually be somebody else. You can get a text message that just ends up showing, your Apple verification ID number is this, to make it appear as if you were trying to do a two-factor authentication. And then you start talking to them, and then it will just snowball from there. They'll get more information, and then they'll say, oh, please fix this error by clicking a link. Again, phishing attempts with emails are the same way. Social media, you'll get random friend requests from people that you don't know, or that appear to be people that you do know, but their account seems kind of suspicious, and you felt that you were already friends with these people, et cetera, et cetera. But trying to keep it short for you guys, many different types of scams are IRS scams, immigration, deportation, romance extortion, banking scams, and a ton more. Some of the warning signs, obviously, if you guys have any questions, please let me know. Some of the warning signs with these scams, the caller will say, they'll seem very urgent. It's extremely urgent that you don't hang up, that you need to talk to them. There's a warrant for your arrest, your identity's been stolen. I actually had a young lady come to our station some months ago, and she was on the phone with somebody who claimed to be with the DEA, and that all her identity was found at a crime scene in Mexico where there was a murder and drugs and all these, and saying that she needed to wire money to them through Western Union to Hong Kong, you know. So thankfully we were able to intervene with that and nothing came of it. Unfortunately, a lot of these come from overseas or out of state, so it's very hard to trace these. However, the federal government is, you know, federal agencies are on top of tracing these and prosecuting these people. So progress is being made to combat this. However, you know, it's just something that's very hard to get ahead of sometimes. So as you can see in all these bullet points, these are many of the things that you can come across in terms of warning signs. Some other ones will be a big, big red flag in my mind, and I get these calls on my personal phone and my work cell phone. You'll get a phone call from somebody who will seem legitimate. They'll say they're from some federal agency or they're from some company or something to do with your credit card, and the first thing out of their mouth is, can you please verify your information? Without identifying the company, without identifying who they are, without asking if you are who you are, they'll say, sir, ma'am, please verify your identity. And my first question to them is always, who are you trying to reach? And 99% of the time, they immediately hang up the phone. So if somebody calls, they don't identify themselves, and they immediately ask you to verify your information because they sound very official, become suspicious immediately, ask for a callback number, don't give them any information, because 9 times out of 10, if it's that important, they'll identify themselves, they'll provide a callback number, or they will be able to know who they tried to call to begin with. They can be very aggressive, they will threaten you, they will say that you have warrants for your arrest, they'll do many, many things. But one thing I will tell you is federal agencies, primarily the IRS, the Social Security Administration, will not call you. They will notify you in writing first. Multiple times, they are not going to call you. They are not going to claim that they need money through Google Pay cards or Apple Pay cards or anything like that. Another big red flag, as I was just saying, the payment that they'll sometimes ask for, and we've had, unfortunately, students wire thousands of dollars to these people, is they'll ask for payment in prepaid debit cards or wire transfers or Google Play cards, Apple gift cards, iTunes gift cards, so many different ones. And that's a big red flag because nobody takes that in payment. Sometimes we've also heard of Bitcoin being requested or Cash App or Venmo and all that kind of stuff. So be very, very wary. If you hear something like that, it's most likely a scam. Well, I'm sorry, it is definitely a scam, and you should hang up the phone and not be too concerned about that. Any questions so far? Sorry, I know I'm kind of droning on a little bit.
Nope, it's all good.
All right, then I will just keep going. IRS scams usually consist of imposters calling, and they'll claim they work for the IRS, that you owe tax collection, or they're in tax collection, you know, you owe money, they're demanding payment. They say that there's a warrant for your arrest, but to get rid of the warrant, you have to pay for that, and that's not a thing. That doesn't exist. So just to put you at ease there. You can receive emails, text messages for this. It's usually a click here link that is in phishing emails. I've also had close calls myself where I've received legitimate looking emails that appear to be from Google or something to say that your password has been stolen or somebody logged into your your account here. Please click here if you need to change your password. My advice is if you get emails like that from what appear to be Google or Snapchat or social media accounts or anything of that nature, never ever click the links in those emails. Always go to the internet outside of the email, log into your account, and every time I've gotten those, I go through it outside, Come to find out there's no problem. There's been no login activity. It's a complete phishing attempt. And to clarify what I mean by phishing is phishing, Phishing, is an attempt where scammers will try to elicit or fish for information through scams and emails and posing as other people or other companies and things like that. So that's where that term comes from, is phishing. So phishing emails, that's what that involves. Tips to avoid IRS scams. Just be aware that the IRS will never, ever, ever call you first. They will always notify you by mail. Anything to do with unpaid taxes, it's always going to be it's through written media or mail. Always ask them to provide their name, any serial or badge number if they're claiming to be a special agent or a police officer, and a callback number. If they refuse, be very, very, very suspicious. Be suspicious of threats. The government is never, ever going to threaten you. The IRS is never going to threaten you that they're going to have you arrested for not paying bills. That doesn't happen, so that's definitely something that's also going to key you in that is a scam. So feel free to hang up the phone, and if it is a problem, call those agencies directly. Look up their number separately through the internet. Reach out to them. Most of the time, they're just going to tell you they never called you to begin with. Do not give in to demands for money or payment. Be suspicious for any demands of wiring money, anything to do with prepaid debit cards or gift cards. Don't click on any links, any suspicious emails, anything like that. And just to be aware, phishing attempts go to federal government emails, the military, police, private people, everyone. So it can happen in any email account you have, anywhere and any time. There's been phishing attempts through Department of Defense. There's been phishing attempts everywhere. So it can happen anywhere, so always be suspicious and always be wary. Now let's see if this will play. This is the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, is actually very helpful when it comes to being aware of these scams. And let me see if this will play. Is anybody able to hear the audio?
We don't hear the audio.
Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, that looks like it's my computer audio. I can send this PowerPoint to send this PowerPoint at the end, and that way you guys will be able to look at this video later, because it's very helpful. It's only about, as you can see, about 1 minute long, and it's very, very helpful. So I'll go ahead and skip through that video for now. All right, immigration and visa status claim or scams. Same thing. Callers will call and they'll claim to be a part of a government organization that has to do with U.S. Immigration, Customs, and Border Patrol. Be very, very careful when you see a phone number calling you and it appears to be a legitimate phone number from the Social Security Administration or a relative or anybody. They have the technology and the ability very easily to spoof phone numbers. So we had a report not too long ago to our agency that somebody received a phone call from a phone number that appeared to be from their boss. And the person they picked up the phone, they assumed that it was their boss, and that person was able to get them to send them a large amount of money over at least 1 or 2 days before they finally got suspicious. So just because you see a phone number on your cell phone that appears to be a relative or a federal agency of any sort, don't assume immediately that they are legitimate. My advice would be to, if you're suspicious at all, say you'll call them back, hang up the phone, and call back the same number, and you'll usually find out that that's not actually the real person. Imposters are going to want to obtain information. They'll ask to verify your name, your social security number, your date of birth. Don't give them any information. I usually question them and ask if they have my information, who they're trying to reach, or just ultimately hang up the phone and try to call back, or just assume that they will call you back if it's that important. Anytime there's a threat, as I've said before, it is a scam. That doesn't occur. All right, so more tips are generally the same. The government will not accept payment in the form of any gift cards or any Bitcoin whatsoever. They're not going to demand any money. They're not going to threaten to arrest you if you don't give them that money. Don't give any personal information. Don't give any bank account information or anything of the sort. Just generally, if somebody calls you and it's suspicious, ask for their information back, say you'll call them back, or ask who they're trying to reach. Most of the time, you'll be able to avoid that. Romance and extortion, unfortunately, these have kind of been on the rise with us as well, usually done over the internet. Somebody may try to add you through Snapchat, through Facebook, through Instagram, through any dating apps, any dating websites. Usually what will happen is they will have a picture that appears to be somebody of, the opposite sex or they're somebody of interest to them, and they will end up friending them and beginning romantic conversation that then leads to nude images being changed or videos being recorded. And usually right after that, what will happen is that person will then have recorded that and screenshot all the images, the videos, and they will then threaten to send all that to the person's friend list, any family and friends information that they were able to find on the internet. If that person doesn't send them money via Venmo, via Cash App, anything like that. So be very, very wary if somebody tries to friend you that you don't know. Yeah, I think I kind of covered everything there. All right, just tips in general. Just don't accept any friend requests from anybody you don't know or any account that looks suspicious. Don't agree to participate in any intimate act online or other video chats. Don't send or give the person any money or any banking or personal information. Banking and check fraud scams, usually done by mail. You will receive an official-looking check in the mail with instructions how to deposit it and then send a check or wire the money back using their own funds, minus a percentage back to the person, which usually ends up in a check bouncing or somebody losing a lot of money. So this is definitely something. So if you receive a check in the mail that says deposit it that you don't recognize, don't do it. This is something to be wary of too, especially if you deposit stuff at the ATM or anywhere in an outside area where it's not a bank, where there's security cameras or anything like that. People will sometimes approach you and ask you to deposit a check for them and then immediately withdraw the amount of money. And what this does is essentially they are able to take a fraudulent check that they've written, you will deposit it to your account, they don't provide any information to you, you withdraw that money, and then they provide you $20 or any small amount of money in exchange for doing so. And what that does is that allows them to take a fraudulent check, get money from that they never had to begin with, turn it into cash, and walk away without getting caught. So be very wary of that, because we've had people do that for a long period of time that took us a long time to catch, but ultimately we were able to catch them. And then you end up ultimately just being the one that loses out anyway. Sorry for that. All right, tips just generally, don't deposit a cash or check for anybody you don't know into your account. Don't deposit anything that's not in your name. Don't give anybody your banking information. Don't allow anybody to use your bank account you don't know. Immediately report that kind of information to the police. All right, so these resources are actually very, very important, and this is what I end up giving people when they actually come to report scams where they've actually lost money or there's been some kind of compromise to their private information. I usually send them immediately to these websites, or specifically the Federal Trade Commission, ftc.gov. They have a significant amount of resources on there for people who are victims or people who just want to educate themselves. So I will send this PowerPoint so it can be sent out. However, if you feel free to write any of these down, whatever you need to do, these are definitely very, very helpful. Reporting identity theft when it occurs to you, whether it be your name, an attempt, date of birth, social security number, phone number, anything like that. If you go to identitytheft.gov, That's a website by the Federal Trade Commission that allows you to report this to them, and this is how federal investigations go underway, and usually it ends up leading either overseas or over state lines to somewhere else. These cases end up being very significantly difficult for us to prosecute most of the time because they are not within the state or even within our jurisdiction. So that's why the FTC comes in handy. There's also something called the Do Not Call Registry, which I will definitely advise that you at least go to the website donotcall.gov and call the phone number. And what it does is it gives you the ability to get off of call lists for telemarketers or a lot of other people who can call and try to get your information or just find your number easily in order to try to scam you. However, I honestly believe that is about it.
That's great. Thanks so much, Detective Moser, for educating us, helping us understand what to look for. I too know people who've been scammed, and I get them routinely. So I think one of the key things is do not click on that link.
Yes, it's pretty simply put. It was probably a lot easier than what I just did.
So I do have a question. So
Yes.
is there like a typical profile of a student who gets scammed? Like, do you see any similarities in the type of people that they're trying to scam?
Not necessarily. I honestly believe it has a lot to do with just them taking the chance and coming across the right person at the wrong time. International students who are graduate students often end up getting victimized. Not a large number of them, but a small number of them end up getting victimized, and I think it's mainly because they end up getting on the phone and, you know, they just say the right things to these people, and unfortunately they become a victim of it. So I don't think it has anything to do with people being targeted so much as it's just a chance.
Right. So we're all vulnerable.
Always, all of us are vulnerable.
All right.
I always share the story when I got into the detective unit. Within probably about an hour of getting my work cell phone issued to me, I got a spam call that was demanding money from me. So it's very, very easy for me to screen that call very quickly. So, but just to show you, the second you get a phone number, they just start calling you.
Right. Right. Well, if you can hang out with us while Zach does his presentation, we may have some questions coming in.
Sure.
So that'd be great. All right. Well, thank you. And Zach, take it away.
Thanks, Debbie, and thanks, Detective Mosier. And really, from what I'm going to talk to you about is a lot of what Detective Mosier covered, because at the end of the day, the scams are all very similar. And so when you get to me, there's limited options that I have, because there are very few ways to recover the funds or gift cards from somebody that you may have given them to, whether they're local or whether they're international. And so it really is about being proactive and making smart decisions before you get into trouble. And so I'm going to share a PowerPoint that's pretty short, but it has a lot of the same information that Detective Mosier went over, because it's really that's how important this information is. And so first is I can't tell you enough how many times that I have met with a graduate student who has been scammed, because exactly as Detective Mosier said, they received a phone call from someone who was posing as either someone from the IRS, someone from USCIS, someone from ICE, that is saying, you're out of compliance, you didn't file this paperwork, and now you have to pay this exorbitant late fee that's $1,500, and so you need to wire us money within 24 hours or you're going to be deported, or you're going to be kicked out of school. And it really is, anyone is vulnerable in the sense that sort of information, if somebody tells you that and they're convincing, it puts you in such a state of panic that you just are under so much stress that you weren't expecting, that it's hard to know how to react. And it really is an emotional response. You're not thinking rationally. And that happens to anyone, because, the reason you're here is, because, well, one, you're smart people. It's not as though it's not as though our students fall prey to scams because they're dumb. It's just because you care so much about your academics and your research that you want to do everything you can to protect that. And that's normal. And so it really is about trying to have this information instilled in you and make sure you remember it, so that you can sort of combat that stress and that anxiety that you're going to get when they call you, and you can be dismissive of their claims. And so if anyone says they're from the government, from any agency, IRS, FBI, police, USCIS, ICE, or even from the university, they're never going to ask you to wire money anywhere. It's just not how the US government operates, or state government, or the University of Maryland. And in the same way for gift cards and prepaid debit cards, that will never occur. Just our government doesn't work that way. And if there is someone who says that you need to bribe them to keep compliance because they have some sort of control over your case, they don't. They're lying to you, because all of those calls, just as Detective Mosier said, 99 times out of 100, you're not getting a call from a federal agency. The IRS will never call you. They will send you letters and say, call us. And that's why, it is smart to ask for a callback number and say, I can't talk right now. Let me call you back and figure out what the number is. And you can look it up and make sure that is a legitimate number, because as Detective Mosier said, they can spoof and hide the number they're calling you from and make it look more important than it really is. But we've had students, there was a student just last year who was called by someone who was saying that they were from the federal government, and that the student needed to go to Target and buy $500 worth of gift cards. And then they purchased the gift cards, and they said, okay, read me the barcode number on it. And the student did. And then 5 minutes later, the gift cards were redeemed, and that money just disappears. Target is going to say, we didn't do anything in this. We're not going to give you any money back. And a lot of times the individuals are overseas who are committing this fraud. And so it's very, very difficult to prosecute them. And even if they are found and prosecuted, you're not going to get your money back. And so to make it as easy as it is the best way to protect yourself is to be proactive. And so never wire money to anyone you don't know, never buy gift cards, never buy prepaid debit cards and read the numbers to someone over the phone. It's just never going to be a realistic scenario. And I understand why it happens, and it feels as though it's very official in the ways that they can do it, and they can be very convincing, but don't do it. Another very common scam that I have seen is it deals with, and Detective Mosier talked about this a little bit, it sort of exploits a loophole in the banking system. And that is specifically to someone will write you a check and deposit it, and usually they'll ask you to give money back. You may meet them on the street. Another way that it happens is sometimes if you're trying to sell something locally, maybe through Craigslist, or maybe you're trying to, maybe it's through a scam that they're posing as a landlord and you're trying to figure out if you should live there. But we had a student last year who was trying to sell a computer on Craigslist, and she was trying to sell it for, I think it was about $300 or $400. And somebody said, yes, I will buy it from you and I'll mail you a check and you should get it by the end of the week. And then the check ended up being for like $2,500, which was a lot more than the computer was worth and not what was agreed upon. And the student called the individual and said, this is more than you're supposed to give me. And he said, oh, I'm in the middle of moving, and that was the check I'm supposed to give to the moving company. And so could you just deposit that? And I'll actually, instead of the $400, I'll let you can keep $600. And if you deposit that and just wire me $1,900 back, so that I can give it to the moving company, because I really need this computer right now and I don't have time to send you another check. And what happens is the banks actually take between 5 and 10 days to verify a check. And even though in that time period, you may have a policy in your bank that your bank will clear funds within 3 to 5 days, but it's not actually free to use. It's not actually guaranteed that the check is cleared. And so what will happen is you'll see those funds either pending in your account, or they may even show that they're in your account. But then a week later, you'll find out that the check was bad and it bounced, and the bank will then remove that money from your account. And so that $1,900 that she thought that she wired to somebody out of the $2,500, well, actually there wasn't $2,500 in her account, and the bank then took all $2,500 out, and she had a deficit. And so that's something that money she will never get back. And so you need to be especially wary when someone is writing you a check for more than something is worth, even if it's just the agreed upon amount. You're trying to sell, your phone for $150, and they say, actually, I'll give you $250 for it because I need it right now. And it's going to be a red flag. Those are the things you want to look out for and really avoid. So I know that nowadays checks are becoming less and less common, so less people are willing to accept them. But if it's from someone you don't know, then you really shouldn't accept a check from them unless it's for some really nominal small amount. Like if you're selling something for $20 and they write you a $20 check, there's very little risk involved there. But if for some reason there seems like something is too good to be true, then it definitely is too good to be true. And so watch out for that. What can you do when things go wrong? If you think that someone has stolen your identity or they have sort of perpetrated a scam against you, you should check your credit report, because if it's some scams where they're posing as others and you disclose some information, if you have a social security number and you tell them a social security number, or if you give them certain information that they can then try to use to open a new credit card or things like that, you want to make sure you check and make sure that didn't happen. And so you want to use the government service, the annual credit report at annualcreditreport.com. You can check each of the 3 major credit bureaus for free once per year. And you can do this anyway, just to make sure that nothing's going wrong, whether you're suspicious or not. If something is on there that is suspicious, or if you realize that you had a phone call with somebody and they said they were from the university or said they were from the IRS, and you had to give them your social security number or some personal identifying information and realize you maybe shouldn't have, then you can go to the credit bureaus and put a fraud alert on them. And you can, or if it's really severe, you can put a credit freeze. Now that's going to make it harder for you to do things, because that's going to prevent you from doing some day-to-day things. But it's going to be necessary if you know that you have been the victim of a credit fraud, scam, or identity theft. If things go wrong, Detective Mosier is very knowledgeable, as are the rest of UMPD, and so you can call UMPD to contact them and ask for help, especially if you're in the middle of a scam. If you say, I can't do this right now, can you call me back tomorrow, because you were able to have a moment of clarity and say, this doesn't seem right, but I'm not sure. You can call the UMPD, and they've been very helpful. I know that there's students that I've advised in the past who have gone to them, and sort of UMPD listens to the phone call and tries to get information so that they can help prosecute and help find the individuals. And so you contact UMPD. If you're past that point and it's no longer ongoing and you're trying to seek remedy, you can still report to UMPD, but you can also seek assistance from the Maryland Attorney General's office and the Consumer Protection Division. And then, just as Detective Mosier said, the FTC is sort of the federal agency that is in charge of trying to prevent and also prosecute a lot of the types of identity theft and scams that occur. And so you should go to their website at ftc.gov, or identitytheft.gov is specific to reporting complaints about identity theft, but they have a lot of great information as well. And so the last thing we have is just resources, but it's pretty much the same resources that Detective Mosier said, because these are the ones that you need to know about. There's some preventative ones through UMPD will post on their website, on their news section, when they find certain scams that are targeting students. ISSS does that as well. And so you can monitor both of those websites to see if there's any up-to-date information. The Maryland Attorney General's office has some consumer credit tips. They have a brochure for that. as well as preventing identity theft. And then the FTC has a whole host of brochures and information on their website that explains how to know whether this is a phone scam and how to prevent yourself from falling prey to that, and things you can do to avoid all of these fraudulent scams. Because at the end of the day, it's a 1 in a million chance to sort of get your money back after you wire it somewhere, after you buy these gift cards. But if you can be proactive and take steps to figure out what is suspect and what you shouldn't, who you shouldn't trust over the phone, which is most people over the phone, then you'll be in a really good place, and you sort of can prevent it from happening and avoid the harm in the first place, which is what we're hoping to do here. Anything you wanted to add, Cindy, from your experience? I'm sure you've seen a lot of students with this as well.
Yeah, and if you mentioned this while I stepped out to make sure my kids were back in school, I apologize. But we've had a couple of, I call them employment scams, where students see an ad for a work from home position. It's usually an assistant, an executive assistant or a clerk kind of position for really high pay. It looks too good to be true because it is too good to be true. So the scam can occur. I think I've seen 3 different ways. One is they get your personal information, because when you apply, they might say, well, we run a credit report, or, we require this information on our application. And suddenly they have all this personal information about you, including possibly your social security number. The second way it can occur is they promise you this great pay, and then they give you your first paycheck, which is great, but it's a fake check. And same thing. Oh, I overpaid you. That's fine. If you just wire me back this portion of it, will be fair and square. So it can occur that way. Or I'm traveling, so I can't send my client this money that the business owes them. If you can go ahead and forward that to them, then I'll pay you back, and I'll give you, $100 in addition to doing it for me. Same thing. It's a fraudulent check. So you're giving them back money that they never really gave to you in the first place. So I've seen a couple of those over the past few years as well.
Yeah, I think those are great examples, and especially in current times, I think there's probably a lot more people looking for remote work and sort of work from home situations, because your jobs on campus are hit or miss. There's fewer things open, and sort of other opportunities are as well. So that's a great example of things to look out for. I know that because this is going to be posted online and hopefully for other students in the future, another one is sometimes when you're moving, and it happens a little bit more maybe in DC than it would in College Park, that you're going to see an ad on Craigslist that is for a very, very low rent for what the area would be worth. And they're going to say, we have tenants in there already, so you can't come see the place, but here's the pictures. And so if you just wire me first and last month's rent, then you can sign the lease and we'll have you in next month. And you really want to be wary of those. You want to take some steps to look them up and see, is this a real address? That's not always a key, because a lot of times they may just pick a regular address because you're only talking to them on email, or maybe they're saying, email me, and then you start chatting on WhatsApp or WeChat or something. And it's sort of, there's no way to confirm. And so you really want to look for information about who owns the property. And so both in DC and in Maryland, there are government websites where you can look up property owners. For Maryland, it's called SDAT, the State Departments of Assessments and Taxation, and you can just type in the address and see who owns it. And if they're not the owner of the property, then you should sort of be wary of that and question them. And then similarly in DC, it's called PIVS, the Property Information Verification System, PIVS. And so pivs.dcra.gov, and you can find more information about the owners of the property. And so it's not a fail-safe. And so I think that's one that, if you're unable to look at the property ahead of time, and you're not going through a large property management's website, or you didn't find it through the university, it's not one of the campus housing sort of affiliations, then that's what Cindy and I are here for. You know, email us and set up an appointment with us and just let us know, like, I have concerns about this place. Like, does this look real to you? Does this seem suspicious? You know, it seems like such a good deal, and I would love to live in that part of town for that price. But it may not, it may be too good to be true. And so really that's what we're here for, whether it's proactive, I think there's a problem and I'm not sure, or whether you realize something went wrong and you want help trying to navigate your way out of it as best as you can. That's what legal aid is here for. Both Cindy and I are here to help you with appointments. We're doing Zoom appointments now, so it's really accessible for you. And then if it is sort of you've fallen prey and given someone money, that's what Detective Mosier is here for, and UNPD is to try to see if there is any way that they can find the perpetrator and sort of charge them with the crime and see if there's any sort of remedy or way to get the money back. It's not always possible, as I said, but we're here to help, and if you have any questions, we're also here to answer those as well. So I really appreciate everyone who came out, and if you have questions, feel free to chime in or put them in the chat.
I had a couple of questions or a couple of examples of housing you reminded me of, Zach. We had one where the poster literally went to a condo website and posted stock photos of this beautiful condo, 2-bedroom condo in DC with a swimming pool. And, it was like something ridiculous, like $900 a month. But if you acted fast and gave them security deposit and 1 month's rent up front, you could guarantee your space. So the person PayPal them, it wasn't PayPal because it wasn't protected by PayPal. I think it was Venmo. $1,800 and then ghosted. So, and then the second example, which I think really shows that these scammers they're opportunists. They wait for scenarios where they can victimize people. So this was this summer. And in the flurry of everyone trying to sublease their places because of COVID and they were going home, this scammer would say, I'm ready to sublease. I want your apartment. If you just give me, because most of these sublessors were saying, if their apartment was $900, you pay $500, I'll pay $400, just to minimize their loss. So the tenant would say to this new person, I'll pay $400 every month if you pay $500. Well, this scammer was like, okay, great. If you give me the $400 now, then I'll just write the rent check every month. And so for 6 months, 6 times 4, $2,400, the person who was subleasing wired that money to the new tenant, ghosted. So the tenant was already in a horrible position because they were trying to go home and get out of their lease. And now suddenly they were out $2,400 more. So these scammers look for people who are in vulnerable conditions and scenarios and say, what can I get out of this? And I mean, that was a brilliant scam because this person was so desperate that they were ready to do anything to sublease their space. So they're very creative.
Yeah, and it's extremely frustrating to hear that because it just is people who are both vulnerable but also in a position where they don't want to lose what they have, right? And so students typically don't have a lot of money because they are focusing on their studies, and same for our graduate students that are in the same boat, and our international students who are really, there's a current climate that puts them on edge from the administration that they don't trust, and they care so much about their status and wanting to complete their studies that it really is like the worst of the worst people who are targeting these individuals. And the ones who fall prey are the ones who are so trusting and the ones who are just doing everything they can to keep moving forward. And so it's terrible to hear that. Yeah, it's just sad. Any other questions or anything else?
Thank you guys for hosting this, and thanks, Detective, for coming.
Yes,
absolutely.
glad to help out.
Thank you so much, Detective Mosier. And when the detective sends along his slides, we will send them out to everybody who attended and everybody who registered, as well as the slides that I just shared, which hopefully will be helpful for anyone, and they'll be up on our website so that if your friends have questions, you can always point them there. But we really appreciate everyone coming out, and again, thank you to Cindy and Detective Mosier and Debbie as well. All right,
thank
everybody,
you.
take care and have a good one, everybody. Thanks again.
Take care.